top of the afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for another session of Habitat Office Hours. My name is Kaya Tolliver. I am a developer advocate here at Progress Chef. I am here with George Westwater and Matt Wrock of the Habitat team. And we are going to discuss some new habitat updates that are unfolding for the product here. Happy to have you guys on again. Thanks for
Happy to be
joining
here.
Yeah, thanks
us.
for hosting us again.
Awesome, awesome. Before we get started, let's, as usual, you all have been joining us for a while. You know that we do our pre-flight checks. So, if you are not following Progress Chef on Twitter, what are you doing? Follow us at Chef. You find all of our um, content that we put out regarding like blog posts. You find um, new live streams that we're going to be doing, planned outages and things of that sort, like and also webinars that we're planning as well. Absolutely all things chef on Twitter. It's like our little piece of Twitter land. Also, our community Slack. If you are a practitioner or if you are looking to get into the chef world, absolutely follow or join our community Slack. There's a wealth of knowledge there. Matt, you interact a lot on community Slack as well. Um, we do also a weekly community meeting where all the teams put out all of their updates and where folks can ask questions if they have questions about things that the teams are up to. So be sure to check us out there. Finally, please be sure to check out our Discourse channel. Discourse, it's more like Stack Overflow for Chef, right? Um, we've got we do release notes, we do our meeting notes. If you have a long form question that you need a forum style answer for, that's where you would want to go for that content. All right. Actually, first, we do have some community questions. Do you mind answering our community questions first, Matt? I don't want to put you on the
Sure.
spot here, but I've got some pretty interesting questions from some of our community members. Let's get started with those. Okay. So this question came in so what we do and just kind of giving you a a synopsis of kind of this community question session. What we do is we get the questions that are have been asked from since the last Habitat Office Hour session, and ones that have not been um, fully fleshed out, or may we want to dig into a little bit deeper. We talk about them on the next one. So, question from the community. Hey, I'm having a brain fart moment. My CI was working up until recently. Looks like some changes in Circle CI meant more, or excuse me, meant that containers don't run privileged anymore. This causes a state failure, permission denied, when running a build to the studio container. Do you know a way around this?
So, first of all, I just want to say I really resonate with the brain fart moment. And I kind of, I live my life. I like to think in a brain fart. It's more than a moment. But at any rate, so there's good news. Well, there's really not much of good news. I'll be honest here. We don't support for the studio. So for a studio, a Linux studio, we don't support running that in a non-privileged container. So because what happened when the studio starts up, it starts up in a rooted environment. So you have to have some capabilities to spin up that environment. So you have to have like admin, you have to have Chroot. Both of those require a privileged container. So we, unfortunately, that's just not something that we support. So when you're running Habitat inside of your CI, and your CI is spinning up containers to to perform, whatever it is that you're telling it to perform, and that's going to include spinning up habitat. Then you do need to make sure that that you've got a non or excuse me a privileged container. You know
Okay.
the there is the option of spinning up the studio in a Docker container. However, you've got a limitation there where if your CI system absolutely has to perform whatever commands you give it inside of a container, then you've got the container inside of a container issue, which is likely not going is not going to work for you. Um, and So at any rate, the short answer there is um, when entering a Habitat Studio in a container, it does need to be privileged.
Great. Okay. I hope that answers your question. Um, Thank you so much, Matt, for that. We got one more for you. Okay. Hello, everyone. I have a Node.js app that that's built with Chef Habitat. The app has an endpoint that receives a file and writes it buffer to a file at the current act directory with the fs.write file sync method. When I run it in a Chef Habitat supervisor, it turns me to the following error. I have added the following command at do install, and after I copy all of my app files to the package prefix, I get the same results. What's going on here, Matt?
so so one thing to keep in mind, when you're writing files or writing anything to disk at runtime, you do not want to write that to at what at build time is called package prefix. Basically, and at runtime that would translate over to your whack hab whack packages directory. The directory where the actual package content is extracted to. Because the idea is that that's your package, that's your packaged content. That's more or less immutable. And so you don't want to change that. So what Habitat does is when it spins up your service, it basically it runs inside of this other area called hab/service, hab/svc slash whatever your service name is. And so if, for example, let's say in your run hook, you need to start up your binary and give it an argument of a file to write to, or maybe you have a configuration template where you give it a setting that points to some path that you're going to be writing log information or writing some kind of data to. Habitat does provide you with some variables that will point it in that direction. So for example, in a hook, that would look something like bracket, because the templates are using the handlebars syntax. So it'd be, open bracket, pkg dot svc underscore data underscore path. If you go to our docs and you look up service templates, there should be you should find a page that will actually list out all of these. But svc underscore data underscore path, what that would do, that variable would expand to /hab/svc /your service name /data, and then you would find those files inside of that data directory. If for whatever reason, data just didn't, wasn't a good match for the directory that you want, you still want to put it somewhere under package svc or in that svc directory. And there is also a variable called just svc underscore path, and that'll just hit to the root of your path, and you could append, whatever is the appropriate directory for that. So, thanks, George, for providing that link. But
Yep.
so that's and so because we do specify very specific permissions, both on the packages directory and on the svc directory, with the intent that the packages directory shouldn't be tampered with, and the svc directory can be. So hope that's helpful. It makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. I hope that is helpful. Any follow up questions? Please feel free to hit us up either on. If you're watching now and you have follow up questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Otherwise, you can ask follow up questions for that in the community Slack. Also, I would like to do a shameless plug. We do pull all these community questions from either community Slack or discourse. So if you want to get your questions answered on live, absolutely, throw them in our habitat channel, in our community Slack, or use the habitat category in discourse, and we will look there in those areas for our community questions for our live streams. So moving on. Thank you so much again, Matt, for answering those for the community. Okay, let's get rid of this. So, Matt, I hear there are some really major updates to Habitat's backoff and retry logic. And can you talk about those? And I hear you also have like a demo for us.
Yeah. Love to talk about it. Let me share my screen. And while I'm, oh, hold on. Yes, I do want to share. Oh, no, I don't want to share my system audio. Sorry, 1 second.
No
Okay.
problem.
So
Okay.
while I'm talking about this, I'm just going to switch on over here. So this isn't, well, I guess technically it's publicly available, but it's not very publicly discoverable, but it will be. So this is going to be the documentation that we will have on this feature. There's still a little bit of discussion on some fine points of the documentation, but the main reason why I want this up is just so that you can see these arguments. But at any rate, so this release is going to introduce some new functionality to basically how we handle failures of init and run hooks. So today, what happens is if you have an init hook or a run hook that fails, it just continually restarts. So it'll just run in this loop, and it'll just restart, almost instantly. And there's no back off logic in there at all. And that's served us well for quite some time, but we have had some users come to us with some scenarios where let's say, I guess a good example scenario is, let's say you're hitting some kind of a network resource, and you like maybe a database, for example, and also let's say you've got hundreds of supervisors, maybe thousands of supervisors, and you've just updated your service, and this service has a new has some new logic in the run hook that goes off to this database, and grabs some information that it needs to feed to maybe the binary that's going to call in your run hook. And for some reason, something goes down. Maybe that database is down, or maybe that database is, shall we say, suffering, and it's not as beefed up as you would like it to be, and you now have thousands of services querying that database all at the same time every single second. And now it is down for all intents and purposes. And so what would be nice in that type of a scenario is if, we could say, hey, init or run hook that's pounding my network resource, could you please maybe wait a little bit before the next time? And if it keeps failing, maybe think about the fact that it might not be up for a while, and wait a little bit longer. So that's exactly what we've done. So we've added some logic where you can basically feed this a minimum period of time to delay, and a maximum period of time to delay. And I'll explain this algorithm because it's not incredible. It might not be as intuitive as you think it would be, but the idea is that it will start off like, let's say you give it a minimum backup period of 5 seconds. And by the way, so these right here on my screen, these are the 3 new arguments that we've introduced to have soup run. So when you start up your supervisor, these are the arguments that you can give it that I'm about to explain. And it should also, I'll also point out that this will apply to every single service. So it's not on a service by service basis. This applies supervisor wide. So if you have multiple services, this will apply to all those services. So, and these, it takes a number of seconds. So the value that you give these will be in seconds. So if I say minimum backup period of 5, maximum backup period of 20, I'll explain cooldown later because that's where it gets a little bit more complex. But what's going to happen is the first time it fails, it's going to wait 5 seconds. And each additional time, it's going to get closer and closer to that maximum backup period of 20 seconds. Now, we use an algorithm we borrowed from AWS. It's basically called backoff and jitter. So it adds to this backoff algorithm the concept of jitter. And so what that means is while it's every single time it fails, it's getting closer and closer to that backoff period. And basically the way to think about this is that the more times it fails, the more likely it is, not guaranteed, but likely it is to reach that maximum backoff period. So essentially what we're doing every single time we determine when the next restart period is going to be, is we're taking a random number between that minimum backup period and maximum backup period, and we're adding a multiplier based on the number of times that it's failed. So, and I'm not going to get into the total nitty gritty of the algorithm, but just suffice it to say that the more times it fails, it's going to be very likely that it's going to reach that maximum backoff. But if it's the maximum backoff is a 20, there's a chance that it could be 17 or 15 at times. And the reason for this is that if you do have thousands of supervisors, and when your network resource does come back off, it would be nice if not all thousands of my supervisors hit it at the exact same time. So by adding that element of jitter, we basically add, a more distributed period by which these different services will reach out to that network resource in this case, and that way they won't overwhelm it when it comes back up, and you don't incur the possibility that it's going to come right back down.
So Matt, just a quick question, not to oversimplify this, but if we think about it, is it sort of a random spread of time? So the intent is if we were causing overloaded resources, in your case, maybe I was hitting the database at 1,000 nodes. What we don't want to do is if it fails, have all 1,000 nodes check in again in 5 seconds. We want to spread that out a little bit more evenly. So in the case of network resources that we're overloading, or even maybe if we were saturating your internet connectivity in low bandwidth environments, we're starting to spread that out so that the error isn't likely to continue. We're giving the underlying systems a chance to recover.
That's correct. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Yeah, so it's spread out with skewed to as it proceeds, it's skewed towards the maximum period. But yeah, there is that spread there, and that's exactly right, George. So it's. Yeah.
And Kaya, thanks for putting the link. So we included the original backoff and jitter AWS article. So if anybody's interested in reading more about the origination of this from the article posted March 4th, 2015, that'll give you a lot more details, a lot more of the nitty gritty components that Matt was talking about.
Yeah. So let me talk about this third one, because this one might seem kind of weird, like cooldown period. What is that? So basically what this is that the thing to think about is Habitat doesn't necessarily know, it doesn't know how long it's going to take for your service to come back up. And so if we're in this situation where it's continually failing, and so it issues, let's say, a run hook again, it issues that run hook and it doesn't know, like, well, are you back up? I mean, are you really back up? And, while we do have a health check, there's no guarantee that there's no hard requirement for that health check to be there. A lot of services out there don't have health checks. And so, Habitat simply just calls that run hook, and, we hope for the best. So what the cooldown period does is that basically says you've got to be up for this amount of period before I reset the whole backoff algorithm back to the minimum backoff. And so, for example, I start off, I've got a minimum backoff period of 5, maximum backoff period of 20, and let's say a cooldown of 30. So 5, 20, 30. So I start off my first failure is going to be 5 seconds. Eventually, I'm going to get to 20 seconds because we'll be hitting the maximum backoff period. So most of my retries are going to be around 20 seconds. And I retry again. And now if the service continues to be up now for 30 seconds, the maximum cooldown period of time. So if I have 30 seconds of uptime, it's going to say, cool, things must be good. I'm resetting it to 5. And so let's say at 35 seconds, I go down again. Now my next delay is going to be back to 5 seconds. Now, if it failed, so it starts off, 20 seconds later, it starts again, but it fails in just 10 seconds. So that cooldown period wasn't reached. Then the next time I fail, I'm going to still be hitting my maximum or close to my maximum backoff period. So I hope that makes sense. So the other thing I want to point out is if you do nothing, if you do not provide any of these arguments to the supervisor will just continue to behave the way it does today. So, there's some users that may actually anticipate this behavior, the behavior that's continually restarting, and maybe they've got their services aligned up where, they don't know if the network resource is going to be up or down. They just want it to, keep retrying until it's up. And they really don't want it to delay. That's cool. Just don't add any of these parameters to the supervisor, and it'll just continue to work the way it does today. The other thing to point out is this is not yet released. So in today's supervisor that everybody has, no matter what version you're running, if it's a stable or at one time stable version, it does not have these. It does not have these parameters. However, so a couple things. We are anticipating a release fairly soon. I don't have specifics on timing, but this feature is. You can expect this. You can expect this in the near future. However, if you did want to try this today, you can do that. So Habitat posts, so all of our releases or all of our builds that pass through our end-to-end testing pipeline land in a particular channel called acceptance. So just to give an example, if I wanted to do if I wanted to pull this down today, I would do hab package install core/hab sup, and then I give it a channel of acceptance. I've got this weird, my keyboard. First of all, I can't type. And my keyboard, I have this keyboard. I know. I've been doing this for 25 years. And it's nothing to be proud of. But it's gotten to the point where the letters on my keys are I can't find. So E and F and R and T, and eventually I guess all of my characters are going to be like this. So maybe that's how I teach myself how to type. Eventually,
maybe that's it. So you have to memorize it.
Right.
Get this guy a new computer, please.
No, I love this key. The funny thing is, this keyboard that I have, I won this keyboard as back in 2015. This is before I worked for Chef. I was, what's the award that we had at our community award? So I was the chef of the year. I can't believe I don't remember at any rate, I was one of the chefs of the year, and one of the prizes was this keyboard. And so it has sentimental value, and it's also like a really cool mechanical keyboard. Anyways,
that's what I was gonna ask. Mechanical keyboard.
yeah.
Somehow, people who have mechanical keyboards are very passionate about their keyboards.
It's
So
funny. Like I'm not at all like a keyboard snob. I used to work with this guy that would literally make his own keyboard. Like, anyways,
wow,
but once I got this keyboard, I'm like, oh, I get it now. Like, it's nice.
satisfying. The
So,
sounds.
yeah, it is. It's very satisfying. But it's annoying as hell for other people in the room. But at any rate, so if you issue this command, which I've already done and I already have it, this would get you this particular supervisor. And if I should also say, if you were to do that would get you the CLI. And then, like, what I'm going to do is so if you can see, so I have, in my path, if I were to just do have, that would call the stable habitat version, which I think is 477, I think. And so this is 491. And when we do a release, it's not going to be 491. It's going to be like, I don't know, it's going to be something higher than 491.
Right.
But if you got 491 today, or whatever is in our acceptance channel, one way to do that is just, call that the absolute path, which is what I'm doing here. I'm just going to say soup run. So I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Do it.
And so, as you can see, I haven't passed it any of those parameters. So, because I want to show just kind of like what happens today when this happens. So I've got just this dummy service that I run called blank one. And so that's running right now. Everything's going fine. And basically what that run hook is doing, this is probably a very unique run hook in that it looks for a file. And if the contents of that file is not 0, it will emit that value as an exit hook, or as an exit code. So right now it's successful, but let's make it fail. Let's see. So this is that file that I'm talking about. So if I do save this, so now it's gonna. I basically am putting this into an eternal failure state. So it's just gonna keep retrying and keep failing and failing and failing. And this is exactly what you see today. So so now let's go ahead and add some of these parameters. And I'm not gonna shut this down, because one thing I want to show, to which is fully documented, but just some people aren't aware of it, and it's good to call out here. So some may not know that all of the arguments that you pass to have soup run could be passed in a configuration file, and there's a known path. So it's a soup.toml file. So it takes a toml format, and it would be in your hab soup default config directory. And basically, as you can see here, I've got these commented out. So it's not adhering to these, but I'm going to give it a 5 and a 15 and a 20. And if you're curious about it, search in our documentation for supervisor configuration file. There's actually a parameter you can feed to hab sup run to generate a configuration file with all of the possible parameters that kind of templatized, and they're all commented out. It's a good way to, like, a good starting point. So just something to be aware of. So I am going to.
So quick question for you, Matt.
Yeah.
Do you need all 3 of those arguments for this to work, or is it a combination of them would also enable the feature?
No, you do not need all 3 to work. So there are defaults for each of these, and basically if you enable either the minimum or the maximum, that basically kicks the feature in. I apologize, I forget off the top of my head what the defaults are. They might be in here somewhere, but at any rate, there are defaults, but no, you don't need all 3. You just need either the minimum backoff or the maximum backoff. And one thing, another actually good thing to point out about this, come to think of it, let's say you don't want this fancy, jittery randomness. Let's just say, hey, I want this to retry 10 seconds every single time. The way to do that is easy. You make the minimum backoff period and the maximum backoff period the exact same value. And then it will just constantly use that exact same restart period. So just a helpful little hint for those that like deterministic retries. But so I've made these changes. I'm going to save this file. So I've got a minimum period of 5, a maximum period of 15, and it's going to wait 20. The service needs to be good for 20 seconds in order to reset itself back to 5. So another thing to show. So I've saved this file, but the habitat supervisor doesn't know anything. So it's going to just keep on behaving the way it behaves. So here's another little command that's nice for people to know is habsup restart. So what habsup restart will do is it will restart your supervisor, but it will not restart your running services. So I don't want to get too much in the nitty gritty here, but we have this other process that we call the launcher that runs, and it's in charge of launching your services, and it basically owns those processes. And it's a totally separate process, and it's the parent process basically of all your supervisor. It's also the parent of the supervisor. So what it can do is it can shut the supervisor down, and then this is also another way that you could update the supervisor without incurring downtime. Is you can shut the supervisor down, and then you can start it back up. It'll look for the most recent supervisor on your system and run that. But also in this case, what it's going to do is it's going to shut the supervisor down, and when I bring it back up, it's going to hydrate itself with those new configuration values. So I'm just going to run that. It's going to restart it, and I'm going to go back here, and I'll see a little blip. And now what we should start to see, so as you can see right here, it's saying stopping service will restart after 5 seconds. So it failed. It's going to restart after 5 seconds. It's going to come back up. And now we're up to 12.15 seconds. And the next one, was there one in between? Okay, now it's at 15 seconds. And now it's probably what we would probably expect to see is it's going to hit 15. Every once in a while, we will eventually see something below 15, but the vast majority of the time, it's going to be at 15. So yeah. So here we see like 12.66. So there is that randomness, but it's going to be skewed. And the thing is, like, the more, even after it gets to that 15, the more it fails, the chances are higher and higher and higher that it's going to be skewed closer to that maximum value. So like, and here it is 15 again. Like maybe you have a situation where like, I want it to eventually like get to be like practically never. So you give it some ridiculous number, like, 100,000 seconds. And so eventually, nothing will be happening. But now let's go ahead and put my service in a healthy state. Oops. Okay, so now it's going to, so it's starting back up, and now I'm gonna, okay, great. Now but before it gets to that 20 seconds, real fast, let's make it fail again. And so here we go. Yeah, so it's still going to 15. So now let's make it pass again. And we're gonna let it stay up for 20 seconds. It's good. Okay, yeah, it's waiting. Okay, here we go. Okay, so it's good. So we're going to give it 20 seconds. So after that 20 seconds, what I'm going to expect to see when I put it into a failing state is I'm going to expect to see the first failure incur a 5-second delay. So we're getting pretty close here. This happens every 1 second. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. Yep. So now we're back to, so it's reset itself back to 5 seconds. So that's everything I have to say about this feature. I hope this made sense.
Absolutely.
And there will be, so we will have documentation on the feature when it comes out, that you can look at. We've got oops, that was the wrong link. Here we go. We've got this has been posted, but we do have this blog post here that talks about kind of just the background around that algorithm. So that might be helpful to look at as well.
Yep, and that is in the chat. So if you are looking at this after the fact, just click the comments and you will see the link to that article posted. Thank you so much, Matt and George, for going over that, those new updates that are rolling out. If there are any questions from our viewers and the community, feel free to put them in the chat. And if you're watching this later on, feel free to add a comment in the either YouTube or Twitch comments or LinkedIn. I think we're also on LinkedIn. And if you want to get to one of us directly, feel free to just go on ahead and head on over to our community Slack, and you can ping Matt directly. Shameless plug, right?
So on the community Slack comment, anybody who's interested, please try the build out. It's out there. Matt, explained how to get it. We love feedback on this early.
Sure.
Maybe some examples of use cases where this can really help you through a particular problem. Not only are we hearing this as a need in those resource constrained network style environments that Matt was talking about, but also use cases where Habitat might be running in low bandwidth or edge environments where you're downloading large files or competing for other style resources such as network connectivity. So if this is helpful to you, it makes sense for you, please reach out to us. We'd love to understand more about your use case and what your experience is through testing this.
Sweet. We do have a question from Michael Reisenek. Restart, reconnect without restarting services feature. Is that both Windows and Linux?
It is. It is both. Yes.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael, for your question. Great. Well, if there are,
sorry,
go ahead.
You do need I forget what the version was, but that's you need a fairly modern supervisor for that to work. So if you're on a 3-year-old supervisor, that command might not be available. Just to be aware of that.
Sweet. Let's see. Looks like that was our. Let me check. I'm checking Slack as well to see if we have any questions in the Habitat channel. Looks like that's it for now. Thank you so much, Matt and George, for coming on, and thanks, Matt, for demoing the new feature and answering some community questions for us. And we will be on again next month for another session of Habitat Office Hours. So join us then. In the meantime, head on over to community Slack. Feedback, questions, all of the above. We want to hear from you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.